My name's Tony Chapman. I run an advertising agency called Capital C. And I think our position's all about big ideas that work. Work with a lot of blue chip clients, and they come to us for game-changing ways and how to compete in a very hostile marketplace. Most of my work centers around the consumer and where they're heading. And they've moved from this world of mass, one-size-fits-all, 30-second ads to my media. Whether they're getting that through their iPhone or their iPad or their computers or their social networking, they're now pulling in the content that matters most to them. If the television industry is going to continue in Canada, it's going to have to let us get to a narrower and narrower segment. We're going to have to become more precise with our advertising, more relevant with our message. And the only way to do that is through targeted advertising. So I'm in full support of this initiative because Canada needs to reinvent the way we go to market and the way we use television. And I can't think of a better country, because of our multicultural society, because we're a microcosm of the world, than to invent that new model and not just keep it in Canada, but take the learnings we get and export it to the world as one of our future new economy industries. I think the question is what happens to television if it doesn't change its behavior? I mean, we used to feel very protected by the 49th parallel and the borders and what was available in the States and what came into Canada. And we really felt that that was a fortress. Well, that no longer exists because the competition isn't whether something's spilling over. It's Google TV. It's the Apple phone in the 4th generation they just launched. They want to serve up messages to the individual, while television is still sending out this drift net to the masses. Television has to get to the point very quickly where we have an opportunity to reach the scale that that audience provides us, but in a much more precise manner. You know, why does television need to change? Like any other industry that maybe for years has made a vast amount of money, felt protected by boundaries, rules and regulations, the safe haven of saying this is how things have always worked. But you have to follow the consumer. And the consumer is saying that content you're providing me, that ad, no longer works for me. It's not targeted, it's not relevant, it's not a message that I'm interested in. So if television doesn't change and it doesn't respond, it's not about, wow, what will happen to my advertising revenue? Will it go down 5%? Will it go down 10%? It'll be a massive flight of dollars leaving the Canadian broadcast industry and all the people it supports, moving over to things like Google television or the 4th generation Apple phones. And by the way, those businesses don't even need to have an office in Canada to succeed in this country. Another question I might have is who's going to be the early adopters? What marketers would jump onto the opportunity of doing precision marketing, targeted advertising? Well, anyone that realizes that one size fits all no longer works. If I'm a financial services institution, my message is going to be very different to somebody in a wealthy neighborhood versus somebody in an up-and-coming neighborhood. If I'm appealing to somebody that's just a landed immigrant to Canada and just starting to build their foundation, that's very different to someone that's a 3rd-generation Canadian. Financial services, pharmaceuticals, automotive, anyone that realizes that by reshuffling the benefits of their brand, their product, their service, so that they become highly relevant to that audience, are the people that will jump on that immediately. I certainly know half of my clients would respond to that offer and opportunity within 24 hours. See, the other opportunity with targeted advertising is that we're no longer talking about GRPs and reach and frequency, we're talking about relevancy. So if I have an opportunity to target 7,500 homes, 15,000 homes, 25,000 homes, we have a massive amount of marketers out there that never considered television, that have an opportunity to dip their toe in the water and say, if I go to that node, if I start communicating to that community and my phones light up, people start buying my products and services, it gives me permission to continue to experiment with the media that to date has been very expensive and very exclusive to the few. So now David can take on Goliath through the power of targeted and precision marketing. If I was building this business and trying to market it to advertisers, I want to offer them two things. First, innovation, that this was my business, this was my focus, and I would do everything I can to continue to innovate it to meet the advertiser's needs. And the second thing is to make it effortless, because we just don't have time to deal with all the opportunities in the marketplace. What I particularly like about this business model is we're dealing with a single entity who will make innovation their lifeblood, and a single source that by just connecting with them, I will be able to serve up the ads that I want, where I want them, across Canada through a single point of accountability. That is very exciting to me. How much additional revenue is available to TV through targeted advertising? I think it's exponential. I think $100 million is a very conservative number for 3 reasons. One, we have a whole new user group that could never afford television because it was for the elite, the exclusive, those who had the check to shout loudest. The second thing is that in the past there's been a lot of spillover advertising that we haven't taken advantage of that says, well, I don't really need to buy that much because it's coming spilled over. So that's a lot of advertising revenue coming back to Canada where it belongs. But the third thing is there's a lot of corporations around the world that would love to do business in Canada, that would love to use Canada Post for distribution and Canadian warehouses. And by having targeted advertising, it now makes the barriers to entry to do business in Canada much easier for them. So they can start going to test the waters. So I think it's going to have a lot more than $100 million to television. And more importantly, we'll see new brands on TV that interest us because, once again, they're targeted to me. If I'm the CRTC, you're going to hear 2 arguments, for and against. And the against argument is going to be pretty obvious. This is going to eat into my lunch. There's only a limited amount of dollars, and if you're pulling it from here, the right hand might get it, but the left hand is going to suffer. First thing I'd look at is to say, if we don't do this, I think both hands are going to suffer, because I think people are just going to be leaving television in droves because of their ability to serve up relevant messages to the individual. So that's the first thing I would look at, is rather than saying, what happens with the cars, is that going to replace the buggies? The first thing I'd do is, we really got to understand, why is the advertising dollars leaving us in general? And the second thing is, competition is great. Because if this is the start of targeted advertising, and this is the catalyst that forces these monopolies to get involved and start investing in saying, I have to now reach the community, a smaller part of the community, and eventually the individual, I think that's healthy for the industry overall, because that's going to be overall healthy for television. For 50 years, winning market share came down to he who shouts loudest wins. And the brands that had the largest media budget, they could yell out, Tony the Tiger tastes great, and dominate it, got a disproportionate share of market. And whether they had the best product for the consumer, they had the product that won over the consumer. This new world that's happening is the consumers leaving from mass to my, is they're starting to make their decisions, shape their perceptions, their behavior, based on what's happening within their social network, what's relevant to them. So one of the most wonderful things about doing this is it not only ensures the long-term viability of television, because it's going to serve up a more relevant message, it allows the Davids that could never compete against the Goliaths come to the table and say, I have an extraordinary product or service, and I want to tell you, the individual, about it because I know it is right for you.